Gallifrey is back! So I might have a new favorite episode of this series. I love this episode so much. If there is anyone still doubting that Peter Capaldi was a fantastic Doctor, this episode should clearly show that he is excellent for the role. It never once actually struck me as strange that it was like literally just him in every scene, and he does a really great job of carrying the entire episode really, really well. And I loved how they just kind of dragged you along and built up the suspense, and it was really cool and you didn't know what was going on. And I'm a little bit of a nerd for cool clockwork architecture and buildings and stuff, which is why I liked the clockwork creatures in the girl in the fireplace, and now we've got more clockwork, and like as soon as we saw them the first time, it's like, those are gonna be important. They weren't quite as important as I thought, but still, the whole moving castle thing was really cool, and it's clockworky, and it's awesome. And I liked how we never quite knew what was going on till the end when we did, and then we're like, oh man, it's full circle, and he's gotta keep doing it again and again and again and again, and it's like time paradoxes, and I love time paradoxes, and oh my gosh, it's so cool. And then it's his confession dial, which I was not expecting that, but I guess that explains why it has been brought up in like every other episode this season. I'm not too sure how he got inside his confession dial, but I guess it puts a better meaning on the term confession dial because it's sort of pressuring him to confess what he knows or doesn't know. But I definitely knew that there was going to be some time loopy thing as soon as he saw the clothes that were laid out for him. I was like, those are his exact clothes. It's gotta be like there's another version of him, except I thought there's just another version of him running around at the same time, but still I knew it had to be a loop, and especially confirmed when he laid them back in the same way. And I feel like he kind of maybe was starting to guess it at that point too, since he knew that he couldn't, something just wasn't letting him leave them sloppy. He had to like fix them. I also particularly liked his sort of like mind palace that was the TARDIS, and how he'd go in there and try to figure things out, and the faster his brain was working, the slower time seemed to move for him, which was a really cool way of thinking about it. And I liked the sort of blackboards all over and the one screen that was showing what his eyes were actually seeing while he was running around trying to figure things out by talking to himself, because I do that sometimes. There was also, of course, once again, really good cinematography, especially when he was sort of realizing that he's all alone. You had that really big wide shot of the huge empty TARDIS. Like, I know I've seen behind the scenes things where you're like, well, that is a big set, but you never really see a whole huge set unless they're emphasizing that the Doctor's very alone at the moment. And they always do that really, really well. It was really heartbreaking to see the Doctor sort of giving up, and I'm like, oh, no, you don't get to give up, that's not okay. You're the Doctor, you keep going, you win, that's what you do. And I felt a lot like Clara in that moment, like, no, you're not allowed to give up, you have to win, that's how this works. But I do also understand the Doctor, because I feel like that's a bit of, societal pressure, but like friend pressure, like, yeah, but you always do this, that's just what you do. And suddenly you're like, I don't want to do that anymore. But then, of course, he figured everything out, and then he's got to go through that again and again and again and again and again and again until he can finally break through that wall. And I saw somebody on Tumblr pointed out that he had a shovel. He could have used the shovel, but I feel like that might have been maybe like the first version of him, or like somehow within his subconscious he's trying to be like, hey, this shovel will come in handy later. But it's the Doctor, so he's gonna like use it, thinks it's only going to be good for this purpose, and then move on. Besides, it made a stronger point that he was breaking through it with just his bare fists and his wits, and that's the only thing he had. There's no special instruments, no special tools, just him. So, symbolically, I think I can ignore the fact that there's a shovel downstairs. But it's really cool, and I'm very, very much excited for the finale. We get Gallifrey again! We haven't seen Gallifrey in a long time. Like, we've seen some clips of it in the new Who, and that always gets me excited. And I've seen some of Classic Who that has some Gallifrey. And albeit their costumes are ridiculous sometimes in Classic Who. But I love it, and I'm so glad we get to see him back. I'm curious to see how that'll change the Doctor's character a little bit, because it's no longer him as the highest authority. He's the Time Lord, he's superior to all the other alien races, he knows how this works. now there are other Time Lords, and there are Time Lords that outrank him, and there's Time Lords that remember him from when he was a child. So I feel like that would kind of change things a little bit, similarly to how, people grow up and they move on in the world and they sort of form an image of themselves, but if you go back to your family, you kind of maybe regress a little bit, or they know things about you that you haven't thought about in ages, but they still remember. So I'm curious to see how that's going to go. Overall, it looks like this is going to be pretty exciting. I mean, it'd be fun if we had a Time Lord as a companion as well, but I think that misses out a little bit on the connection to the audience aspect of the companion's personality. But it could be fun. You have a relatively young Time Lord who's not really seen much of the universe and certainly hasn't experienced it firsthand, and then the Doctor takes them along, and that could be pretty fun. So until next time when we get to see the finale, I will see you then. Allons-y.